Good morning. It's Tuesday, August the what? 4th, I guess. I don't keep up with the calendar. It's kind of pointless to me at this point. I'll look at it, but as long as I know what day of the week it is, typically that's good enough for me for the most part. I don't plan vacations. I don't any of that crap anymore, so it doesn't mean as much. I sent my brother-in-law a message this morning that I'm hoping impacts in a way that I've been trying to impact for a while. But you see what the world views as progress. All I can see anymore is regression to a point in humanity's history that we've been at more than once. The flood and Babel, to name two. But yes, those stories have been abused by men of religious empire. They don't like to hear you say that. They don't like it at all. But yes, men of religious empire abused the Word of God. Bottom line. That's an indisputable fact of history at this point. It's one they don't like to admit, believe you me. But regardless, a religious empire built what we have today. And they did it on the backs of people that knew not what they did. Like I've said several times, history's had the wrong narrators. But the elect are speaking, and I listen to them regularly. Daryl Cooper is really close. I mean, he just is. But he still worships empire. Or he worships with empire builders. I'll rephrase that. Those that perverted truth in the name of wealth. And they can deny it and deny it and deny it. But history doesn't change because you say that's not what happened. As we go through our day-to-day lives, yes, we control how we interact with the world around us. We can choose to play nice, or we can choose to react. Because the world, as much as they want to claim, is not nice. You can see nice all around, but it doesn't take very long to look around and see the ugly too, depending on where you're at. I think I have WhatsApp. I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't use a lot of apps. I've got a few, but why call me devil on X? The red-blooded Texas boy on Substack. Oh, hello. LOL. That fits. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't take a lot of time to look around and see the ugly out here. I mean, it just doesn't. Right? You come to my front yard, I've got a dog that likes my trash, and I can't bring myself to shoot her. I burn my trash. I live out in the middle of the boonies, and it's not illegal out here. They're trying to make it illegal, but... And then I pick the scrap metal out and haul it off. Kratos was from Gods of War, right? I think that's one my son played. I think I played it a minute with him, but I'm no God of War, that's for damn sure. I only got to see a little of it, but more than enough. And that's just where that's at. But, and Kratos wouldn't drink out of a pink coffee cup. I've had that discussion. You too, have a great one. I've had that discussion already about the pink cup. I've got an autistic stepson. But had a really good weekend. Watched some news, watched some various podcasters on everything from weather to earthquakes to volcanoes to just my usual. But I've kind of slowed down on it some. Not as much as I probably should. But I like to stay informed. Yeah, I do need a lot more time in history, but we all do. Because we've been deceived majorly. That's why I like people like Daryl Cooper. He's not afraid to tell the disgusting about it. He did that some with Tucker. He's done it more than once, but he's a researcher. I'm just a retarded storyteller, and I tell people that all the time. I'm not afraid to admit that. but to the control. As people of any nation, we don't control our markets. They call it the free market because anybody can join, right? Yet, the kid in Atlanta, a young colored fella, we'll call him. Some don't like being called black, some don't like. You can't please hardly anybody anymore, but invented what has affectionately become known as plastoline. Recycles plastic, cooks it back down into gasoline, and you can run it in your car. Kids had to go into hiding because big oil doesn't like when you mess with their market. Mostly because that's the only thing keeping this economy going at this point is oil. Because without oil, you can't war. Without oil, you can't produce. Without oil, our way of life stops. Bottom line. So no, we don't control anything. They've given us the illusion of control. Again, the only thing you control is how you interact with others. That's it. And when I'm out in the world, I try to give as many smiles as I can, just because that may be the only one that person gets that day. It's not always easy, I promise you. And I fail at that too. But the one thing I won't do is give up my belief that even through all this, something gets to remain, whether it's my kids or your kids or anybody's kids. The question is, at this point, what's gonna be left for them? Because this crisis ain't over, I promise you that. Sorry, I like to watch the yard around me, and well, the sun's coming up in the east, directly in my face. Kind of northeast, but I figured I'd take the sunrise and save you guys the glare on the screen. And I don't have a lot of decent shady spots around here to set up in that stay shaded. This one will be shaded in just a few minutes, so I deal with it. The world has been ran by dark money, and people don't like hearing that. They just don't. My money's clean. I got clean money. I earned this. To an extent, you did. But what built the need for that clean money? and what keeps the value of that clean money where it's at. Because that isn't clean at all. And it's rather gross. I've followed money trails more than I'd like to go back over. I just put it that way. And I don't follow it myself. I go to the ones that have been chasing those rabbits. And there are too many out there to discuss, but Ian Carroll's one of the first that comes to mind. I know Danks has done quite a bit of it. There's been several. But they refuse to acknowledge that it goes back to the Catholic banks as well. That Catholic banking empire since 2015, 2016, if I'm not mistaken, has been ran by the Rothschild Foundation or family or something along those lines, which had direct ties to Jeffrey Epstein at the time as well. So the religious want to scream and shout about what he had done, but as soon as you start bringing up how they're tied into it, my viewers just drop to zero, and everybody just wants to shut their eyes and ears and la 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 la, the world is perfect. And that's disgusting. If you're not willing to look at the reality of what's going on around you in all aspects of your life, what do you know of truth? No, I'm not a fun person to be around. I try to be. I'm just not a fan of all the illusions. Illusions of freedom. How you doing there, Peter? Illusions of everything. The biggest one is control. We don't control the markets as much as we like to think we do. That's controlled by corporate interest. It just is. And no matter how much you want to try to convince me it's not, you have no proof that would change my mind. And yes, the Catholic Empire is ran like a corporation at this point. I try to discuss with people of various religions how they've been misled about the history of their own religion. And is an indisputable fact at this point. Catholicism allowed for the brutal slavery that was eventually ended in America by the Pope. The current Pope apologized for that. At the same time, he was denouncing AI. The denouncement of AI took way much more of the view than his acknowledgement that Catholicism advanced slavery. But they didn't do that alone. It wasn't Catholics in Africa that were selling the Catholic slave traders and Protestant and everybody else. That was not Catholics in Africa doing that. That was Muslims. Two enemies working together to build golden empires. Because the money that funded the Ottoman Empire didn't come from within, it came from without. And that's just a statement of fact. Or it came from outside. But that's the same with all empires. They don't fund themselves. They're funded through converts and all kinds of other things. So even if you believe yourself to be a good person because you are saved, or a righteous person because you are saved, what are you saved by? Because if it's your religious empire that saved you, what did they save you to? I always thought I had some semblance of control over my life. I could choose not to drink. Still wasn't going to change the situation that I was living in. The only thing that would change that was leaving. And that, as much as I deserved that, was not an option because my family didn't support that. Knowing what was going on, they didn't want to support it. It takes a lot to move without acknowledgement. Yeah, I came back home to my family, broken and crippled. Not entirely physically, but physically enough that I don't have the options I did. And sure, I could go back to school for more computers, but I would have to do it from home. And where I am, that's just not a real good option. I've taken a few programming classes, a few tech classes. Uh, I went through that my computer career stuff. It was fun. I thought I'd do it, but it didn't pay what I needed to maintain some semblance of what we were living in, and well, that just wasn't an option for somebody who needed more. Again, we have the illusion of control. And controlling our actions is impossible. Because we always lose control at least once a day. Whether we admit that or not, we react too quickly too often. And we cause someone else to react when we do that. And that's how we end up in wars. That was one that Tucker and Daryl talked about in the podcast I watched last night and this morning. Essentially how we found ourselves in the current war we're in. And how what happened is not the American way. It never has been. Well, Iraq was rather similar. I mean, he was firing rockets mostly into the ocean around us before we went in, but well, when we started, is because we were building up kind of how the opinion as a teetering on that empire. But that's possibly because I watched too much sci-fi as a kid. Who knows? But that goes back to control. None of us have really had any control over anything in my lifetime other than how we interact, because it doesn't matter who you put in office. Politicians do what politicians do. That dark money gets swapped around and votes get made. And that's just a statement of historical fact over my lifetime. And then you end up with the current THC laws in Texas, and it's a communistic system brought to you by free market capitalism. Well, this substance is so dangerous that the state is the only people that can process and profit from its sale. But you can't have that chemical in its raw form because that is just way too dangerous. We have to process it and add chemicals to it before you're allowed to touch it. Again, the illusion of control. You're not allowed to control your life. The government dictates what you're allowed to do. The only thing you control is how you interact with dictation. Follow the law, or you may find yourself in jail. If you sin against your brother, run to him and apologize, or you may find yourself at the mercy of the court. I beg for mercy at the court. This entire life has felt like a jail sentence. Again, I don't script any of this out, so yeah, there's a lot of dead space. I apologize. I like to work things through in my head before I begin and then just roll with it. But I am listening to other teachers, and I do plan to start taking notes. Professor Zhang is one of the finest teachers I've ever watched. He's one of the elect, and he's almost there. I mean, he's so close to where I am, it's unreal. But he's still hung up on source. From what I've seen, I haven't watched all of his stuff. Like I said, I would love to have a discussion with him one day. Mostly so I can learn from him. But I do have to counteract some things with words from the first four gospel. I haven't read Thomas. I haven't read a lot of these other ones. Those are the main ones I want to hear him discuss from. I don't like to have debates. I like to have discussions. Debate leads to war. Discussion leads to understanding. And they tried to push me into debate and all these things as a kid, and I wanted no part of it. I like the general format, but I prefer a discussion, not a debate. Things quickly become a debate because people are too willing or too unwilling to admit they've been deceived. But it goes back to the whole control thing. History has been controlled by the wrong narrators. But the elect have risen and are speaking out, retelling that history. I'm the idiot that killed himself that's trying to put the pieces of that puzzle together and narrate this entirety of the story. It's not an easy task. Because there are too many pieces. We may get there before those legs give out. And they're shaking as it is. And that technocratic empire that rises afterwards, that one's, the question is, does that become reality? You can already see in ways that's what they're aiming for. You've got AI robots in China that real remorse for injuring people. So what real control do you have over the future? You think you have some kind of control over, I mean, you control how you spend it or where you put it to earn more. But you don't control the markets. Again, that's controlled through corporate entities. They like to proclaim where you spend your money is what makes the decision. But when you start following the corporations, you see it all leads back to one central hub. Again, thanks, Ian. You pieced that together splendidly for the people. Now all they got to do is go to Buyer and do their own research. That's the app he made. BUI''R. I use it from time to time, but at this point, it doesn't matter what you do, where you put your money. I mean, you can try, but control's overrated. You can't control people that have the money to outsmart you at every step of the turn, or every turn of the step. However that one goes, I don't remember. And the only reason the money does them any good is because there are too many willing to take it. So my suggestion is control how you interact with others, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Because you'll never control anything out there, no matter how much you want to kick and scream that you do. I love you, folks. Have a wonderful day.